Hey guys, what I want to do right now is run through with you what a resume is, the general idea, just kind of a pretty basic intro into a resume, and then in the next video I will actually give you the resume assignment itself. So a resume itself is, I think of it kind of like a baseball card, and it seems silly, but as a kid I collected baseball cards. I think most kids did that, are now middle-aged old adults like myself. But on a baseball card, on the front was the player, on the back you flipped it over, and it gave you rows and rows and rows of statistics. Everything you wanted to know about a certain player and their quality. Everything from home runs and RBIs and average and stolen bases and walks, and you could really get a good idea if a player was a good player just by looking at that stat sheet on the back of their baseball card. You may never have heard of them, but you know if they were kind of a top tier or middle tier player based on that. That's kind of what your resume is. It is way more in depth than your cover letter. Your cover letter is just your top 4 to 6 kind of home run type big things that you have done that tie to the job. This is everything that you've done, whether it ties to the job or not. Now, any way that you can make the things that you've done tie to the job would be great. But some things are a pretty big deal, and they maybe don't tie to the job themselves. But this is where you can put those things. So it's your personal data sheet. A lot of the same things apply, though. It's got to be organized, no errors, things like that. You've got to decide what your format you want your format to be. I'm going to give you a general format, but understand that whatever the format is that you select, it's got to flow and it's got to be consistent. Typically, individuals are going to group things like education, activities, work experience, volunteer experience, technical skills, computer skills, things like that. They're going to group them together because it allows that person who's going to be doing the interviewing to really quickly peruse your resume and decide what it is you do, what it is you haven't done, and it allows them to read it really quickly. And it's also a lot more friendly on the eyes, I guess you could say as well. Again, I said no errors, and errors aren't always just grammatical. Maybe one of the bubbles or one of the things that you use to organize or format it doesn't line up slightly. Or maybe there is a slight size change in your font in some places and then not in others that's not consistent. Those are things that when I did interviewing in the past, I picked out. And for me, it shows a lack of an aptitude that I may feel is necessary for the job. It also just shows a lack of attention to detail. Again, this is them getting to know you on a sheet of paper. So you want to be sure that the way they don't get to know you is that you miss little mistakes and it doesn't really appear that you don't care. So the idea is again, you want to come across as good as you can. First impressions are super important. This is one way that you're making that first impression is by not having any errors. Also, you do not need to do this for this assignment. However, if you really do ever apply for a job, you should use resume paper. Resume paper is a little bit heavier, thicker, nicer style of paper. It takes ink a little bit better. It a lot of times has like a slight color to it, like a slight gray or a slight blue or a slight purple. It should not be bold. It should not be bright pink. It should not be bright red. Some people say, well, look, it'll make me stand out. It won't make you stand out in a good way typically. Now, there may be some industries out there that want you to use bright pink, but a majority of industries, that bright pink or that bright blue or bright orange is going to basically throw a flag up, and it's not a flag of, hey, let's hire this person. It's, hey, it's a flag of this person may be out there a little bit. So you have to know your industry, but when in doubt, go with a calming, soft color. That's important. Again, it should be typed in word processed. The format, basically, again, some tips here. It should be consistent. You should detail your experience and skills. So if there's a way, again, when I'm talking about in my resume, and I may have talked about it in my cover letter, but I'm going to talk about it again in the resume, that I worked at a restaurant as a waiter. I want to then go into, don't just say you were a waiter. List what you did. Were you a head waiter? That you were in charge of having to deal with customer service issues, you had to handle money, you had to basically manage and multitask because you had multiple tables. So you're going to want to be sure to break all those things down. Be sure that when you break them down, you try and tie them to the job. That's an important thing to do. Also provide dates. If you know when you did something and you have the dates for it, put it down. It shows, again, an attention to detail that you care. Also, be sure that you are showing that you're a well-rounded person. So if you have an area on your resume that's interest, and for example, you're applying for a job as a social studies teaching assistant, it's fine to say that each year for the last 5 years you have participated in History Day. That's great. But when you say, I enjoy participating in History Day, I enjoy watching the History Channel. I also enjoy going to war recreations. In my free time, the only type of books that I read are history-based books. At a certain point, you start to lose the individual reading the resume, and you start to enter into the territory of I'm a little bit of a weird psycho type person. And there's a difference between being into an area and being so obsessed with an area that may actually come in between you and the job. So it's okay to be a well-rounded person and holistic and show that you have other interests outside of an area, but it's a delicate balance. Kind of keep that in mind. I have another video clip here that looks at resumes that I'm going to show you, and when it's done, I'll come back and wrap this all up. So thanks for listening.
How to write a resume. Want to get yourself out of a bad situation and into a better one? A solid resume is the first step. You will need a computer and a printer. Step 1. Write your name in bold at the top of the page, followed by your address, phone numbers, and email address. Then center the whole thing. It also helps to make your heading slightly bigger than the rest of your resume, so it stands out at the top of the page. Step 2. List your work history, starting with your most recent position. Include the place of employment, the dates you were employed there, and the type of job you performed. If it's your job titles that are impressive, lead with them in bold. If the places you worked are more impressive than what you actually did there, bold them instead. Step 3. Give a brief summary of what you did at each position. Step 4. Look closely at the description of the job you're applying for and adjust what you've written to emphasize your most relevant skills and experience. If you're not applying for a specific job, use an objective line to describe what kind of work you're looking for and why you want it. Step 5. Leave at least 3 spaces between job summations so your resume is easy to read, even if that means shortening some sections. Step 6. When you're done listing former jobs, list your education, including the school you graduated from and the degree you earned there. Step 7. After your education, list any personal information, like hobbies, interests, or skills that pertain to the job you're seeking. But leave out the stupid stuff. If you're applying for a job as a mortician, nobody cares if you can juggle. The most relevant skills to include are proficiency in a foreign language and knowledge of a specific computer application or platform. Step 8. Always offer to make references available upon request at the end of your resume. It's classy, and if you actually have them, it's even better. Step 9. Be sure to spell check your work and ask a friend to look it over before you print it out. Step 10. When your resume is letter perfect, print it out on the special paper of your choice. Did you know, on average, for every 200 resumes reviewed, only 1 interview is granted?
Okay guys, now let me kind of quick go through and just show you an example. This is an example that me and Mr. Becker made up of kind of a middle of the road type resume. You can see the different areas and they've grouped those areas down the left hand side, so again it's easy to read. Things that I will point out for you, good and bad. Good, everything here appears to line up. When I say that it needs to follow a format, they've bolded and have a colon at the end of each one of these areas. Areas where I see individuals make mistakes is they'll bold 1 or 2 and then forget to do it on the last one. And honestly, when I was reading resumes, that was a huge strike against you. Other areas that people will mess up is these letters and all the different starting points of all these different types of education that they have really don't line up. Maybe they kind of weave ever so slightly. Again, it's an attention to detail thing. And another area of, or I should say an area of weakness that I would say is they don't use their 3 examples of jobs that they've done as areas of strengths for them. They don't go into detail into what they actually did at the Eagan Civic Arena. As an employer, I might not know what they did. This is an opportunity for them to go into detail. Did they handle money, customer service, opening and closing, handling any first aid needs, cleaning? All those should be bulleted below to give the reader of the resume an idea of what you actually did for the position itself. Also, you don't need to have your elementary school down. For you guys right now, it's middle school. Once you get to college, it'll just be high school. Once you get out of college, it's just college for your education experience. So if you have any questions at this point, what I'm going to do is wrap this up, and the next video will actually go through the resume assignment itself. So thanks for listening. Have a great night. Bye-bye.